Connect Technical Section by Dr. Subhash Kagartudayan, Assistant Professor, Anne Velankani College, Tolayaveta. Please take over the section, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, friends. I'm Dr. Subhash Karthudayan from Anne Velangani College, Tolayaveta. We can straight away enter to the session. Before that, I read the names, okay, in order. We get ready for that. The first one is Sriyanka Shankar, Assistant Professor, St. Clair College, Bangalore. Then second, Dr. Sultana Parveen, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam University, Indore. Then third, C. M. Meera, Research Scholar, St. Aloysius College, Thrissur, Kerala. Then finally, Mr. M. Benedict Rajan, Assistant Professor, Anne Velangani College. Just refine your presentation, okay? Take just 10 to 12 minutes. After that, we can, after each individual, we can give the session for the spectators to raise or ask questions. Okay. Remember, please refine your presentation. Huh? Then I invite the first Riyanka Shankar, Assistant Professor, St. Clair College, Bangalore. Yes, it's your turn. Continue.
Yes, hello. I'm Riyanka
Yeah,
Sarkar. I hope I'm audible.
yeah.
Okay, I'll present my screen.
Yes, you can.
Yes, yes. Okay, so my topic is chameleon identity in East Bengal immigrants, an overview of the East Bengal partition immigrants of Assam, Bengal, and their recreation of surnames of convenience. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, fine.
Absolutely.
I'll continue. Now, see, when we talk about partition of India, it is largely centered on the partition of northern India, that is Punjab, and probably a slight limelight switches to the partition of Bengal, but not everyone know that even Assam had undergone partition, which is in northeast India, and the partition of Assam is primarily it created a lot of controversy because the Kachar region or the Kachar district of Assam was initially a part of the Bengal province. And because of the convenience of trade and commerce for British and their divide and rule policy, they decided to shift Kachar from West Bengal to Assam, and they attached Kachar district to Assam. Now, what happens when this kind of attachment is made is the people of this region, their native language was Bengali, and when they were eventually attached to Assam, suddenly there was a switch in language, and they had to learn a new language, or they were already in a sort of crisis. When the partition referendum was given, as per the Kachar, the decision regarding the Kachar district, a referendum was issued, the Kachar referendum, and it cited that the district of Kachar, which was attached to Assam, where the natives were Bengali, will now eventually be attached to East Pakistan, that is present day Bangladesh. Now, these people had to immediately, migrate either to different parts of Northeast India or West Bengal and find their identity. And we all know that in partition there was a huge, migration taking place, and the people had been constantly, trying to fit in, and the identity crisis that they underwent. Chameleon identity is a sort of an identity adopted by the East Bengal immigrants, as a measure to fit in, as a measure to identify themselves with the natives. Now, John Barg and Tanya Chartan were two psychologists who coined the term chameleon identity, chameleon effect. According to it, anyone's behavior that is perceived to be similar or identical conditionally, they are said to exhibit chameleon identity or effect. So what he means is that it is a sort of a defensive mechanism, just like chameleon adopts the defensive mechanism by changing the color as per the situation. Similarly, in migration theory, often immigrants will take certain adoptive measures in order to mingle or mix with the natives so that they become indistinguishable. So the epiphenomenal event of partition in the history of India has remained a largely discussed domain ever since. So as I discussed earlier, the partition has largely been focused in the northern India, some partition grasped in Bengal, and then the partition of Assam remained largely hidden because, firstly because Northeast India itself had always been into the marginalized region, and as such, the partition of Assam had never gained any limelight. The immigrants who the immigrants who migrated from East Bengal, that is present-day Bangladesh, they scattered themselves to different parts of Northeast India, primarily in Assam, in Meghalaya, and many of them even shifted to West Bengal. The migration took place as per the borders. The districts which were bordering Assam, those people had migrated to Assam. The districts which were bordering West Bengal, for example, Bodishal or Khulna, they all of them migrated to West Bengal. People who were in Sylhet, which is again bordering parts of Tripura and Meghalaya, they again migrated to Meghalaya and Tripura. Now, see, the East Bengal immigrants who went to these different parts of the country had to adopt different schemes in order to identify themselves. Now, it may be noted that East Bengal and West Bengal were always in a sort of a tussle even before partition. The people of West Bengal were known as Bhutis and the people of East Bengal were known as Bangals. And there were a kind of a tussle which always existed, be it terms of their linguistic change differences, their language, their dialect were different. Culturally, there were slight differences, their food habits. So the difference always existed. And there was probably hidden antagonism between these two places. So when East Bengal, became East Pakistan, and the Hindus from there had to migrate to India, definitely these people were not very welcomed in West Bengal because the antagonism had always existed in the past. One of the things that the East Bengal immigrants had taken as a chameleon identity or as a means of identifying with the natives was the surname. In the Bengali Hindu caste system, on the top there is Kulin Brahmins, then there are the other Brahmins, then there is Vaidyas, then there is Kulin Kaista, then there is Kaista, and then finally there are the other backward castes. Now, when the partition had taken place and all the East Bengal immigrants had to eventually migrate to India, it took place in batches. The first batch was for mainly the educated class who were probably not, who were the middle class educated people who would go to Calcutta to get higher education or to other parts of India for higher education jobs. So for them, a job and a degree mattered the most. So this was the first batch that migrated, and migration for these people were pretty much easy. Then there were batches of the higher caste people who realized who have a lot of lands, who have a lot of plots, and it was difficult for them to give up everything. They tried to negotiate, but nothing worked out. And then eventually, the migration was in different batches. It took place in different batches. When all the people, when the immigrants finally, migrated to India, their position or their status was the same. That is the refugee. So they could no longer claim that, okay, I'm a Brahmin refugee or I'm a lower class refugee, I am an educated refugee. Those things didn't work. Their position ultimately was reduced to a refugee. So no matter what, they had to live in the refugee camps or they had to find an alternative means. Now, people who had relatives in India and or in Calcutta at that time could easily find an identity. Setting for them was probably not so difficult. But the people who had their entire ancestry living in East Bengal, found it very difficult to come and migrate and find an identity altogether. I'm talking about the surnames, how the surnames were changed as a means of chameleon identity. So Roy Chowdhury is supposed to be the landlords or the zamindars, the proud landlords and zamindars of the so-called system. And Roy Chowdhury was originally a conferred title by the Britishers. These were the proud landlords. So when they had to eventually migrate, leaving behind everything as an adoptive measure, as a chameleon adoptive measure, many Roy Chaudhary decided to drop off the initial Roy and become Chaudhary. Chaudhary is again a Brahmin surname in Assam. So it was pretty much okay for them. They were still on the Savarna belt. Roy is also another Bengali surname. Roy is again a sort of a conferred title or degree given by the British. In West Bengal or in certain districts of Bengal, Roy is also from the scheduled caste or other backward tribe community. So this was an opportunity when there was no questioning of, obviously documentation was not there, so there was no questioning regarding the surnames. So the Roys, many of the Roys changed their surnames to Roy Chowdhury in order to ascend the caste ladder. So Roy Chowdhury's, many of them dropped the Roy to become Chowdhury so that they could become one with the natives of Assam. Many Roys who were of the Avarna clan, they were already, in a very marginalized position. So for them to become Roy Chowdhury was ascending a caste ladder. Next is Sarkar. Sarkar is again a conferred title in most of the Bengali communities. So people who worked under the British government, they were called Sarkars by the natives, peoples and locals. And eventually Sarkar became their surname. So it was in East Bengal, it was indistinguishable to find out the caste identity of Sarkar. Whereas in West Bengal, many of the Sarkars were from the marginalized community. So when the East Bengal immigrants migrated to India, those who shifted to West Bengal suddenly discovered that they are into a scheduled caste community. They are given a caste, a caste. They are into a scheduled caste community. Now this was welcomed by certain people, and this was also not welcomed by certain people, because it was a time when East Bengal immigrants were already in an identity crisis, and for them probably to set themselves up to find a job, to find an establishment was more important. So Sarkars were again in a sort of identity crisis. Those who shifted to West Bengal, they discovered that now they will be called as scheduled caste, and those who shifted to the rest of India, either in Assam or Meghalaya, continue to be that way. Next is Das Gupta. Das Gupta is also like Rai Chaudhary. Das Gupta is again a Savarna surname belonging to higher caste. For Das Gupta, it was very difficult because when the migration in Assam took place, there were many nationalistic movement taking place in Assam, like the Bongal Kheda movement, which was a movement by the natives of Assam against the Bengalis of East Bengal. So when this kind of nationalistic revolts took place, many of the Das Guptas decided to drop off the Gupta and take the surname of Das. Now, Das is a very popular surname in Assam, and once the Gupta is dropped off, it is very easy to mingle and become one with the natives. However, it is similar thing happened with Nath, Devnath, Chaudhary, Talukdar. Now see, Nath, Devnath, Chaudhary, Talukdar, these were all Bengali surnames, and they are also available in Assam. So it was very easy for Nath, Devnath, Chaudhary and Talukdar to easily, take the surnames of Assam, and they could very easily mingle with the natives without being questioned. The next is the Baduas. Now, Baduas are the Buddhist Bengalis who lived in the hilly tract of Chittagong. and they had to undergo the minority persecution even for a longer period of time. They wanted to retain their identity, and they were the tribals. They were considered the tribals of East Bengal. Now, when the Baduas, shifted to Assam, it was very easy for them to mingle with the natives because Badua is also a very popular Assamese surname, and therefore the Baduas could easily, merge with the natives. Next is Shen Sharma. Shen Sharmas are probably very lesser in number, and this kind of chameleon change was not adopted by many, but only a few, lesser number of Varna clans. And many Shen Sharmas, who decided to drop off the initial Shen and just keep Sharma. So Sharma is a Brahmin surname in Assam, and they were, they dropped off the initial Shen and kept just Sharma so that they could easily mingle with the, natives and become identical with them. However, this is not adopted by many of the Shen Sharmas, primarily because they would lose their permanent, stature of being a Bengali, because Sharma is not a surname in Bengal. Apart from the regular transformation and back formation, the partition also gave rise to great deal of surname changes. Particularly, people from the backward classes have changed their surnames to any of the upper caste surname in order to survive acceptance. So people who were from the backward caste, from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe community, after partition, since they realized that their position is same as the Brahmins or same as the Kaistas, and all of them are conferred the refugee status, they were free to choose the surname. So many of them had openly changed surname of either of the higher caste, either of Kulin Brahmins or Kulin Kaistas. So surname became a sort of amalgamation, a mixture of an identity, a disappearance of identity, something which is not rooted since generation. The chameleon effect can be further felt in the linguistic variations, although both sides of Bengal spoke Bengali, but their language largely differed. The natives of West Bengal are called Ghotis, and the natives of East Bengal are called Bangals. The Bengali or Bengal spoken by both the communities differ largely in stress, intonation, and accent. The East Bengal immigrants who migrated to West Bengal had a complete generation of makeover in changing their language to the new dialect. This transition and evolution of understanding that their primary language is inferior in the new location is the changing of colors as per the situation. So, the language, although both sides of Bengal spoke Bengali, even today they speak Bengali, but the dialect is very different. The accent, the intonation, even certain words are different. Now, the Bengal language is perfectly acceptable as long as there was East Bengal. When East Bengal was no longer there, their language became the language of the minority. And these people who migrated to West Bengal,
Priyanka, can you
yes,
conclude this?
yes, I'm just concluding it. So the language also had to change and take the language of West Bengal, because the Bengal language now became a language of the minority and was no longer acceptable. So these are the few things I have pointed out, which shows the chameleon identity measures taken by the Bangals. Okay. If
Okay,
you
it's the turn for the spectators. If you have any questions, you can. Hello.
yes.
Okay, thank you for your vivid and elaborate and clear ideas about this topic. Thank you. Then
You're welcome.
next, okay. Next, I invite Dr. Sultana Parveen, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam University, Indore. Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. You wind up in, please conclude in 12 minutes. Refine it.
I am audible, sir.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely.
Sir, I am going to present my paper verbally. My topic is teaching of compulsory English of graduate level students in Gorbongo University. English language has gained prominence all over the world in the last 2 centuries. Most developing nations today have realized this fact and consequently have geared their education policies and restructured their educational system to include English language as one subject of compulsory study in the school and college curriculum. India cannot afford to remain uninfluenced by and indifferent to this awareness on the global level. Research objectives to analysis of the common course syllabus, to valuation of the purpose of the syllabus, to finding out the positive and negative aspects of the syllabus, to detecting the selection of the items in the syllabus. Research methodology. There are various methods used in this research which are described and evaluated here. The three main methods used are participant observations, interviews, and questionnaires are some of the qualitative as well as quantitative methods adapted for the study. The chapter also gives information about the field of research that includes the details of the universities from where the data have been collected, the total number of colleges affiliated to these universities, the number of students and the number of teachers who responded to the questionnaires, the subjective and objective responses from students and teachers have been collected in order to get a deeper understanding of the education system. The questionnaires were divided into different sections such as background information, textbook information, classroom information, and so on. Interview. In conducting the interviews, we followed the important point made by Patton below that the purpose of interviewing is to understand and enter into the perspective of the person being interviewed. The purpose of interviewing is to find out what is in and on someone else's mind. The purpose of interviewing is not to put things in someone's mind, but to access the perspective of the person being interviewed. We cannot observe feelings, thoughts, and intentions. We cannot observe behaviors that took place at some previous point in time. We cannot observe situations that preclude the presence of the observer. We cannot observe how people have organized the world and the meanings they attach to what gives one in the world. We have to ask people questions about those things. The purpose of interviewing then is to allow us to enter into the other person's perspective. We had taken 2 times interviews with some participants individually and in groups for both instructors and students. The individual and group interviews for the teachers were held at their offices at faculties of education and languages in respective universities of West Bengal. The group interviews for the students were held in their classrooms and individual interviews according to my request within the faculty's area. Each interview took 30 minutes to 40 minutes for each participant. Classroom observation. The purpose of the observation was to see the reality of classroom instruction from the participant perspective and to generate many questions as possible about the students' participation behavior, verbal and non-verbal, in order to help in this discussion in the context of how they listen, speak, read, and write. During the class, we wrote field notes about the students' participation in classroom, kind of activities assigned, and the teacher's method and styles of teaching. Along with taking notes, we used to sit down with the instructors after classes and discuss with them some issues related to the class and the research subjects. On the other hand, we allotted time chat with the students after their classes related to their class participation and other issues related to the English language skills, syllabuses, approaches used by their instructors, and the materials used each skill. Gorbongo University offers 2 courses that are related to language skills. The data were collected from the graduate students of Gorbongo University regarding their interest, background information, classroom teaching, teaching-related information, and textbook-related information. Students were provided with questionnaires in which they had 4 options to mark their preferences. Analysis of students' questionnaire. The questionnaire is designed to analyze the needs of the learners pursuing their BA, BCom, and BSc. It aims to ascertain their perceptions towards the existing compulsory English syllabus, teaching methodology adopted in the classroom, and prescribed activities. The students were in the age group 17 to 21 years. The questionnaires were distributed of 135 students from Malda College from Gurgaon University. First question, which medium you passed secondary and higher secondary with? Option English medium, Bengali medium and others. Students, 13.12% students have got their education through English medium school. 80.44% students have got their education through Bengali medium, and others 4.44% comprises of other medium of instruction. The result also signifies the fact that Bengali medium schools are generally government schools which mainly produce a bulk of memorizing machines, and they remained deprived for the language learning and improving skills. Second, how do you grade your proficiency in English? We have found 30.33% responded which marks for good. There was 23.55% satisfactory, which is marked for excellent. The learners should be well equipped with oral skills, presentation skills, negotiating, conflict resolving, and knowledge sharing and expressing oneself accurately and fluently. There is a need to change the teaching method and upgrade the syllabus for the average students. How much important is English language to you? 80% students believe that English language is important for the learners. They believe that English is commercial or global language, and because of that, they may get opportunities for a job. I would say that the learner want to learn the language because of their professional. Why do you need command over English? We can say from that 90% students believe that they need to learn the English language for the communication English skill, for professional reasons, for academic career, and for all and for the rest. There was many students who had said that they do not come only for the compulsory English classes for passing the exams, but they recognize the importance of the English compulsory class. Do you think compulsory English classes needs for your career? 84.5% students feel the compulsory English classes need in them. The informers claim that they need the updated version of a syllabus. They claim also these things taught as a traditional way, which does not help much them directly. Does the present syllabus of compulsory English course help in improving your communication skill? 75.5% students believe that compulsory English course classes improved English language to some extent. There are few learners have claimed also that this course is really helpful to build a basic or functional English language skills. Are the objectives of teaching and learning of English are fulfilled in the compulsory English classes? 15.5% students feel that the objectives and learning English are improving in their classes. 22.22% students do not believe that the compulsory English is improved in the class. Most of the informers gave the response for the to some extent and no. The impasse is the fact that objectives of learning and teaching have to be modified the syllabus. Most of the informants believe that teaching method also should be changed. Conclusion. Recommendations are proposed to improve the English language teaching in East Bengal. The investigators selected Malda College, which comes under Gurgaon University, for data collection. The data were collected from the first year and second year students of the graduate program. Total 205 students who participated in the data collection were from first year and second year students. Among them, 40 were of BA Bengali, 35 students were from BA English, 15 students were from Geography department, 10 informants were from BA History, 10 students were from Political Science, 8 students were from BA Sanskrit, 7 informants were from BA Sociology, 90 informants were from BCom section. Thank you, sir. Sir, I have completed the presentation. Sir. Sir. Sir.
Yeah, did you suggest any recommendations? Sorry, methods in your recommendations to improve English learning? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, did you suggest any methods to attain the goal?
Method. Sir,
Yeah, in
uh,
the recommendations, in your recommendations.
hello.
Yeah, yes. If you have any questions, you can ask spectators. Yes, okay. If not, thank you, ma'am. Thanks your presentation, and I think it's clear. But you have to suggest some methods. Okay, thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Then next, I invite CM Meera, research scholars and in Aloysius College, Thrissur, Kerala.
Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible,
Yeah,
sir?
yeah, yes.
Sir, before moving on to my paper, I'm having some serious network issues here. So, can I keep my video off during my paper presentation so that it won't get interrupted in between?
Yeah,
During the
yes.
question answer session, I will switch on to the video mode. Is that fine?
Okay, that's okay. But take 10 or 12 minutes, okay?
Yeah, okay. I'll try to comprehend my paper as soon as possible. Okay. Thank you, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. My paper is titled Cybernetics and Exploration into the Drowning and Cloning of Human Existence as Depicted in the Play The Laboratory by Shivani Tibrewala. Since in my paper I'm concentrating just on one single play, I would like to give a preset for my play just as an introduction to the play so that many would be aware about this play. This play, The Laboratory, was premiered on 27th April 2008 at the National Bioethics Conference organized by the Indian Council of Medical Research at the PSG Institute of Medical Sciences, Coimbatore, and it was directed by Shivani Tibrewala, the playwright herself. The main characters in the play are Joy Fernandez, a junior medical professional, Mary, Joy's mother, who becomes a guinea pig for a drug trial, Dr. Pereira, a senior medical professional, and Arjun, an investigative journalist. So the main plot of this play takes place in Joy's house, the hospital, Ralph's house, and the inner tsunami relief camp. So the story spans a period of 10 years and the narrative goes back and forth in time. And my paper really concentrates into three different fields. One is surveillance, another is post-human concern, and the third is medical humanities. So the role of power and its existence at different layers of society lead to resistance and violence, adversely affecting the life of powerless and lead to their victimization. This paper studies how the mass of men caught within the power structures of the authority, trying to establish the dominant ideology, resist the attempts of the authority at the different levels to protect one's individual freedom of speech and expression. Nowadays, the phenomenon of surveillance has transformed into an overriding feature of conduct and intercommunication within each and every organizational setup. So this spectacle encouraged in the abjecting of dossiers and its examination as data has become the brand new propellant for affluence and progression. Thus, these intermingled processes happening together hoist intense inquiry into the ethics of social relations, data politics, and its impact on the daily life. Thus, here we understand that the notion of privacy too has become exhaustively surveillance. Now, the medicine in the name of cure often becomes a strategic realm to plan and implement the power politics of the structures of neo power, especially the corporates. The play, The Laboratory, focuses on the accumulation of monetary as well as material needs of the pharmaceutical corporate, Lizard Incorporate, by partnering in the international and local relief activities during the time of disasters and pandemics. They give an impression to the public that the corporates exist for the elevation of both the adverse physiological and psychological impact on the victims. These narratives of corporate generosity often keeps the nation states vulnerable, especially when the official toll of tsunami disaster inches higher as depicted in the play. So the play brings out how the data mining of the healthcare system of the third world nations by these pharmaceutical corporates, which are hosted by the first world nations, lead to the breakdown of human bonds and relationships of the third world people, a population with impoverished but healthy body. The urge of the poor in third world to get into a more materialistic world and to lead a sophisticated life paves way to their exploitation at the hands of the corporates and unintentionally gets targeted or gets trapped as target or sample groups. The play also depicts that the narrative of medicine well requires an addition of humanities into it to more humanize the stream as a cure, all for an increasingly mechanical medicine. In the contemporary scenario, the discipline of medicine, with its major concern on the effects that it could bring in the world, it has become more pragmatic and has made it become more thoughtless. So the catastrophe of the digitalized world in which we live is much more than that faced in all other previous forms of power structures. The new mammoth of power in the future, or what we are going through right now, is termed as controlled by bureaus, and it confines in itself very active embodiments of free-floating control as quoted by Deleuze. According to Thomas Matheson, in a two-way and significant double sense of the word, I quote, we live in a viewer's society, closing the quote. In All Alone Together, Turkle argues that, I quote, devices provide space for the emergence of a new state of the self itself, split between the screen and the physical real, wired into existence through technology, closing the quote, thus indicating an element of both physical and digital performance in the contemporary life. In the play, the heated conversation between Joy, a budding medical professional, and Arjun, an investigative journalist, working over the story of racketing within the medical profession, ends upon the issues concerning illegal mining of health data, especially from the third world nations, in order to generate specific target groups to trial dose of various drugs. The pointing at the pharmaceutical corporates, Joy questions who has the power to fight the system. She soon comes to a conclusion that, I quote, who controls what, that's power. But Arjun, knowing the realities of the world, corrects her, stating that who controls what, that's power. Okay. So as the play opens, we find Joy, who is a budding medical professional, completely immersed in the ideals of her profession, Arjun, an investigative journalist working behind the real-world stories, and Dr. Pereira, a senior doctor, not much bothered about the neo-controls established by the pharmaceutical corporates. All these three different people standing at three different spotlights before the audience, representing three different perspectives towards the profession, power structure, and humanity. In the play, Joy, being unable to accept the real face of happenings, which is completely against the ethics of medical profession, she symbolically climbs into the coffin put amidst the stage while a dirge plays in the background. She states that more lethal than laziness, ignorance, and not condoning what one can prevent is the knowledge and industrious meticulousness. This can bring about greater harm as trialing of the medicines on paid volunteers in the third world nations in order to receive patents by the multinational companies sooner than their competitors would result in adversely affecting the genetic function of an entire population on a long run. Arjun proclaims that, I quote, greed, a hungry, demanding child, difficult to satisfy, closing the quote. For Joy, the world has become really exhausting and with its pretensions to be civil. The scene ends on a pessimistic note where Arjun and Dr. Pereira close the coffin lid and kneel in prayer. Eric Prakauner has said that medicine is the standard bearer of Western metaphysics. Placing him, we can take the case of Joy's mother Mary, who is declared dead by doctor due to myocardial infarction. Due to the financial constraints of a middle-class family and an unsupportive alcoholic husband, without any choice, Mary agrees to become a paid member for the trial of the medicine tetraclid manufactured by the Lizard Incorporated. Though Joy pleads Ralph, the CEO of the company, for some sample doses of the medicine in order to help her mother recover from the fatal condition, he informs Joy that nobody compels Mary to undergo the trial. It was her own decision, and the consent form signed by her clearly stated that the medicines won't be made available to the patient outside the trials. Joy, powerless to act, stares at the hung phone, understanding that her illiterate mother was knowingly made a guinea pig. Joy is tortured by the fact that her only moral support, the sole point of relief, and the very person who earnestly wanted her to see as a doctor is no more due to the immoral activities involved in the very same discipline. Now, Joy questions why doesn't there evolve an emotional space of concern even when the entire discipline itself deals with the living human beings. Her ideas about the profession and reality brings her at stake. The statistical data of 2 million people in India becoming part of some clinical trial every time, and sometimes the same drug being tested twice and thrice because of the patent laws, alarmingly brings out the hidden hazard about this whole issue. As the pharma corporates go on reaping bigger profits each time, the number of people, especially in the third world nations, exposed to the risk too increases. The lack of proper intelligence of the judicial system, negligence in giving proper information sessions to the public before the drug is being tested on the patient, as well as the lack of enforcing of strict laws on the companies to compensate the patient's family members for any negative impact of the drug, do provide the First Nation corporates a more favorable space to exploit the illiterate population of the third world nations, who are not even in a state to read and understand the consent forms they sign in favor of the corporate. The reluctance from the side of the government functioning in the third world nations to see the death not just as a negative impact but as a homicide, as the death of one member of a family is like the death of an entire family, do enhance these exploitations. In fact, the mental trauma that Joy suffered from her childhood by witnessing the domestic violence tolerated by her mother increased with the death of her mother, as she lost the only connection that she had with her family, and that too for permanently, making her an orphan altogether. Cajoled by the benefits that the pharmaceutical corporates, by the pharmaceutical corporates, Dr. Pereira, the senior medical professional, he willingly becomes an agent for assuring enough human samples available for the pharma company's clinical trials. So he, knowing the choiceless situation of Mary, takes advantage of her as she lets him to do whatever he thinks the best for her. When Joy, his student, confronts him for his conducting of illegal clinical trials, he justifies himself, stating that medical science can only advance through research. Dr. Pereira efficiently used the relief operation for tsunami victims as a research lab. The blood samples of tsunami victims were transferred to the corporates working on skincare products, while in the meantime, the medicine banned in the host countries were being dumped in these camps with the knowledge of Dr. Pereira, who, busy in cleaning up his illegal acts with his position as a member of the advisory board of the drug controller, also tries to eliminate his witnesses. Deleuze, as the theoretician Deleuze states that modulations happen in invisible or opaque networks that are unperceivable to individual citizens. As a result, surveillance also moves away from being a present and often physical force on individuals to become a more abstract and numerical one. From watchwords in disciplinary societies to passwords in control societies, the point made by Deleuze in relation to surveillance is that individuals become less relevant as subjects of surveillance. It is no longer actual persons and their bodies that matter or that need to be subjected and disciplined, but rather the individual's representation. Where the society is becoming fragmented, so does the individual. So I would like to wind up my paper stating that the play The Laboratory demonstrates an almost funhouse-like wall of mirrors. No matter in whichever direction you turn in this world, it is impossible to get rid of uh, these kind of intermingled functions. So simultaneously allowing to be all seen while is also being seen. Consequently, this level of viewing or objectifying results in a shift in the way in which the objects are viewed. Humans are no longer viewed as such. Rather, they are seen as test tubes of samples just maintained to figure out the experimental outcome of a newly manufactured drug, as you can see in the play The Laboratory. Thus, the play manifests the assertion that such capturing of data results in human beings asked to treat ourselves and the algorithm as a black box, as pointed out by the reclaiming conversation. Thank you, everyone. This I have winded up my paper. Sir, back to you.
Yeah, okay. Before finally, I call the spectators or the online audience for the questions.
Ma'am, it was a very good presentation, Meera. I really appreciate the way that you presented. There is a clarification from your, cybernetics, like as you said, an exploration into droning and cloning of human existence. How do you really coin these two words and how they are interconnected with your laboratory?
Okay, sorry, it's just because I wanted to wind up everything in time, I missed out that particular point. Here, drowning and cloning refers to, it is more related to surveillance. In the area of surveillance, when human beings are not treated as an individual or as a body or a living being, but just as a system of algorithms or coded numbers. See, a best example to relate it to our current scenario would be our Aadhaar cards. Okay, just a number, all information is just at the flip, in a flip of a second, a person's entire information is brought or it is known to everyone. All these informations are just at your fingertips. So in that way, human beings are living in a society in which you yourself think that you are aware of everything, but at the same time, you forget that everyone is watching you, all your actions. So here, any individual, just like how I am living, the person sitting next to me is living like the same manner. Because everyone are surveilled by one or the other kind of authority. Cloning refers to just a kind of photostatic living, just you resemble the same, just like another person. But there, everyone is being questioned of one's individuality in our current existence. Drowning means, just like how you are surveilled through different platforms. So I've used these two terms, cloning and drowning, in order to show that every individual have lost their individual space because even privacy is becoming too surveillant. And drowning, that means everywhere at any time you are surveilled by one kind of authority or the other. So in that manner, in the play The Laboratory, the data of every human individual, their economic standards, their social outlook, everything is judged in order to take up the proper samples from a selected population. Uh, uh, is that clear, or do you need a further explanation? Gian? Or
Yes, Amal sir. Hello. Yes. Okay. Thank you for your good present or best presentation.